Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back. I've been missing for a few days on YouTube, but that's because I was busy playing an open international tournament in the country of Costa Rica. I had internet issues there. I couldn't upload the recaps, but today, to make it up to you, I'm going to share the whole experience with you, from the behind the scenes, the playing hall, my daily routine, and of course, most importantly, the games themselves. So, sit back, relax, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two as well. Stress began before even arriving at my destination. Didn't hear my alarm on Christmas Day, was running late, then couldn't enter the metro. A stranger helped me get through, realized I was not going to make it, got off from the metro, took an Uber, but eventually... Flight is even delayed, so we're more than alright. Well, it's 7 in the morning. The game is at 9 a.m. The first game, round number 1. I don't have internet here. I only have like 1 gigabyte of data that I bought on roaming. So we're gonna go outside to prepare for today. And so it all begins. Game number 1. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready. I'm playing in 1970 with the black pieces. We get into a Caro-Kann. He surprises me with this move Queen F3. I didn't really know the theory, but I decided to just react normally. I did everything alright, developed my pieces, got into a good position, gained some tempo on the queen. Bishop d7 may be a little bit imprecise, but I wanted to protect the c6 pawn to maybe play b5 at some point. But look what's happening. We play a position, I'm playing some decent moves, but look at the time that I'm spending. 43 minutes, now rook c8, 27 minutes. And so what occurred here is something that happens quite often to me, an issue that I'm trying to tackle that I have is that when I don't play tournaments for a while, I don't play classical chess, I really get out of form. Despite everything I talked about in the last video, I was preparing my calculation, my dynamic chess, everything, I was improving, which definitely showed in the tournament, as you'll see later on in the games. But for some reason, when I don't play for a while, I'm very slow and I struggle to find plans and calculate. I really need that warm-up. And so if I can win the first game while warming up, then excellent. So let's see if I manage to do that, because here the situation is still looking alright, but for some reason I've spent an hour until move 16. So that is very concerning. c3, knight f6. I decide that the best way to go here is to trade queens, and I play this move knight d5 with 17 minutes on the clock. And why is this a mistake? Well, because now I'm allowing my opponent to get this outpost on c5 or an e5 with this knight, take controls of the dark squares, and I'm only left with this bad bishop on c7. So ideally my opponent had to take on d5 to just completely get rid of that knight first, but he goes knight d3, which still leaves him with a solid advantage, and now I'm in a very sticky situation where I have this bad bishop, he has this knight, and he has very good pressure on my position. I have to play g6 to protect against this checkmate. f4, he's got the clamp, rook c8, a4, and I play this move c5, another little inaccuracy in a tough situation. Why did I play c5? Because I thought my best bet here is to open up the position so maybe this bishop can get into play. Turns out, tactically, this just doesn't work out. He takes, I take, he takes on a7, which apparently he should have played c4 first, but that's because of a very specific variation that comes up later. He takes on a7, and here I had this move taking on c3. Sacrificing a piece, but I did not manage to figure out all of this in time trouble. I give up that bishop on d7, but it turns out that after I take on b2, I get back this pawn, and I didn't understand that I had compensation in this variation. Of course, I calculated it, but why is it equal? Well, I thought it's not, because of the fact that he has all of these pieces protecting this b1 square, and so this pawn will never really be a big issue. But I'm attacking the rook, say he moves it to e1, and somehow the fact that the pawn is here means that he cannot really use his pieces effectively, which was very difficult for me to understand in the situation that I was in. So I go bishop e8, of course protecting this bishop that was being attacked or removing it from danger, while at the same time protecting this f7 square. But of course this is a very passive situation where all of his pieces are playing and I'm tied down to the defense. So definitely not ideal. He takes on d4, I take on c2, a little line that I had calculated where I gained back the exchange, But even here, if we just compare the pieces that I have compared to my own pieces, I'm definitely much worse. I have to protect this pawn, and tactically this is just losing. Knight g4, I take on b2, I have to go to f8. If I go to g7 or to h8, then he has queen e4 with very dangerous discoveries that just end up winning him the game. So I go king f8, but he just collects the pawn, and finally in this situation, he just trades, and we get into this endgame where he has a knight for a pawn, but in this case, it is just losing, although there were still drawing chances. Why? Because the knight with the rook itself, if we trade all the pawns, are not going to win the game. And so if he wants to push, he has to find a way to do so without trading the pawns. And so we play a bunch of moves, we go back and forth, until finally he decides to start pushing his pawns. Well, first he brings in his king. But here, after g4, I had drawing chances with only one move. So I invite you to try to find that move. And so the reason why I had drawing chances with only one move is that if I play what I played in the game, which is rook e1, now he plays g5, and he's going to bring his knight eventually over to f6, and with that clamp on my pawns, with the rook coming in, he's just going to collect, and this is going to be game over. But I had the move pawn to g5, which I did not spot in time trouble. I didn't really have good prophylaxis in this game. If you remember the moment I played knight d5, and now this moment, I could have stopped his plans, but I didn't. And the idea is that after hg, I just go king g5 and I collect the pawns. And if he pushes h5, then I have rook g3. And again, I'm collecting this pawn, and there's nothing he can really do. He can play knight takes e6 with a check, but I just go back and I'm going to collect this next. So that was the chance that I had in this game. But instead, I played rook to e1. He managed to find all the correct moves. He collected my pawns, and my opponent won the game. So that was a very painful start to the event. I lost the first game. But you know what? There's still 8 games to go. I thought, this happens. It happens to everyone. I'm not in good shape. Now we're warmed up. Let's play. So, game number 2. I'm feeling a little bit better in terms of chess shape. I warmed up, so I'm like, okay, all is good. But I am playing the opening. We got into this line in the Grunfeld with queen b3. I played the opening alright, but here, ladies and gentlemen, again, this is not an excuse. This is simply what happened. I got a fever. I really felt completely hot. My ears were burning, and I had a pulsating headache, which was annoying. And I think it was related to a cold that I got during this tournament, which affected me later on as well. But let's just take a look at the game anyway. The opening went interestingly. Here I have this little pressure on this knight on d6. He takes, and here he decides to give up the queen for a rook and the knight, which is the position that we got. Why did he do this? Because if he doesn't, then I'm going to take on d6, and I'm going to have a better pawn structure, or I'm just going to win the pawn on d6 directly. For example, if we look at this position. However, here my opponent has a little bit of compensation for the pawn because of his beautiful bishop on g7. So this would have been better, but we get into this endgame where I play some imprecise moves. Rook a8 was with this idea of giving back the exchange. So we get into this endgame where he has 2 rooks for the queen. And so what do I need to do? If I just wait around, he's going to coordinate his rooks and he's going to win the game. So I have to get some counterplay, which is why I start pushing my pawns. On the king side, try to open up his king to take advantage of my queen. And here, I had this move which for some reason I didn't spot, and that is pawn to a4. Why pawn to a4? Because I want to play queen g5 check. If I play queen g5 check directly, he has bishop to g6, and then he's just protecting himself from the checkmate, and his rook is protected. But if I play this move, pawn to a4, if he removes his rook, then I'm going to have queen g5 check. And if he moves his rook somewhere here, still protecting the bishop, queen g5 check, he cannot block on g6 because the rook is now hanging. And I'd be able to take back on f5 next if he moves his king. So this was what I had to do in this position. I did not find the move a4. I played queen f4. And now we're in this endgame where black is slightly better with the 2 rooks for the queen. He's even up a pawn. But he blunders in this position with rook to e5. Looked good to attack the pawns. Problem is now I have queen e8 check.
And if he goes king g7, I have queen e5 picking back up this rook. And so he goes king h7, but then I take this pawn, and all of a sudden, I'm actually doing all right. I have this passed pawn, which I'm going to start pushing very, very soon. I made some moves. I pushed the pawn. And here, I'm actually completely winning in a few moves' time, where all I have to do is push my pawns and win the game. So rook g5, and here I had the very simple move. Queen d7, he moves his king, and I go to e7. The reason I didn't find it is because somehow I was concerned about some imaginary checks, but he can never coordinate his rooks properly. I'm just going to run with the king. And so something similar happened later. Rook g7, I go queen f8. We get into this endgame. We both play a bunch of quote-unquote blunders, because there's one exact engine line which wins the game or saves the game for both sides. But here, finally, I managed to push this pawn. Rook a3 check, and what I have to do here is play king to f2 and then run with the king. But it's not that simple. Rook a2 check. What is the engine recommending? Rook a1. It's saying I should go back to f2. It's not properly understanding exactly what I had to do either. Now it's saying king e3, but here it says go back to e2. Okay, check. King d3, check. And I run into this direction with c4 and then go this way. And I escape with the king. And then finally I'm going to be able to push my pawns. That makes sense. So I had to find an exact way to run over to c4. I did not spot this, and so I went to f4 with the idea of escaping this way. The problem is he coordinates his rooks in a way where now he picks up my pawn, which isn't able to promote, and now this endgame is just a draw. So that was very annoying. It slipped away from me, so I have half a point out of 2. Not the ideal start, especially against low-rated opponents, but I gave myself a little moment to not worry too much, because if I now just stress out and say, oh my god, what a disaster of an event, I'm not going to make a comeback. So let's treat everything one game at a time. Let's try to play the best possible way. Game number 3. It's the next day. I'm still feeling a little bit sick, have a sore throat. At least the headache is gone though. And I chose a not so good line. I didn't expect him to play the Catalan. That's what happened. I thought he was going to play the move b3. And here I was going to play d4 and get into this kind of position where I have to hold the tension. Now my opponent, he's somewhat of an older player, so he was like 2300 at his peak. I understood that of course he's going to have good chess knowledge, but if I hold the tension and get into a complicated position, then I might be able to create some very good chances. But he goes into the Catalan, where I don't have anything good prepared against this move knight e5. And here I play knight c6, which is the correct move, but what happens here is that black just equalizes, which is not what I wanted to do. I'd rather play a not equal position, but with chances to win, but this is just a very dry position where nothing is really going on. I play everything correctly, this is theory, queen c4, I'm down a pawn, but I have compensation, and this is just a very dry endgame, where both of us played perfectly. This looks like a Grandmaster game. Look at this. No mistakes, no inaccuracies, no blunders by any of us. I hope you can see it. Well, you can see the graph at least. Yeah. 99% accuracy. But of course, it's easy to do that when the position is very simple. And so we played this endgame. I tried to create some winning chances in an opposite color bishop endgame, but nothing really worked. And this just ended up being a draw where none of us really managed to create any significant chances. Okay, I have 1 point out of 3, but I'm feeling better. I'm still a bit sick, but I'm feeling better. So let's prepare for game number 4 and see if we can finally get a few wins and start a streak in this tournament. Spoiler alert, something like that did actually happen. So the next part, I was strong. So let's see what happened from the preparation to game number 4.
Well, my data hasn't been working, so I had to go to Starbucks to prepare the next game. I'm going to take the risk of playing knight c3, hoping that my opponent will go to d6, which is almost sure because against e4 she plays a perk. And here I prepared this little move, h4. And now it's all about simply looking at all the possible moves from the database, using the engine, and I know she goes into c6 structures a lot. So I prepared h5, and I put special emphasis on c6, because this is the kind of position that I most found in her games. So let's see how this round goes.
So now the situation is critical. I'm losing 18 rating points in the tournament so far. I have to get a few strings of wins in this tournament. I play d4, and my opponent surprises me with the move d5. She's always been playing these kind of perk setups, King's Indian setups, and now she goes d5. I'm like, what the hell? Okay, we have to play c4. This is the move that I play. A Slav. How much I hate the Slav. I don't like the Slav. But you know what? Let's play knight f3. I decided to go for this move e3, which is called the slow Slav. And I did know the main theory here, which is related to knight c3. But I went for this move queen b3. And after queen b6, I had a little preparation related to c takes d5 and this position here. But I went knight to c3. Because I didn't quite remember, but this is still a playable position. e6, bishop d2. I'm simply developing my pieces. I'm out of theory. As you can see, my opponent has been thinking quite a lot as well. So you know what? I was happy. We got a position that is outside of the book where I can create some chances. Knight h4, bishop g6. I take that bishop. And now we have the two bishops. I take on d5, bishop d3. I develop knight a4. And we get into this interesting endgame where we have a little bit of an imbalance. I have the two bishops. I have this pawn structure, which is maybe a little bit worse, but I have the rook. So let's play some chess finally. Knight e4, I have to take this knight. I don't want her to be able to take this bishop, because this bishop is very important at controlling this b4 square, where I eventually want to start pushing this pawn. So I take, I play b4 because I want to go knight to c5, king e7, h3 first, and king to e2. Why? Because we wanted to avoid any nasty things happening on the h2 square. Important to note here, for example, in this position, rook takes h2 is not possible, because I would just take back and then play g3, trapping this bishop. So we go b4, h3, king e2. I'm playing a little bit slow. We are in a complex endgame, knight d5, and I was very happy with this move that I had calculated, knight to c3. The point is, of course, that if they now take on b4, sorry, I can take on e4, which would be a very good position for me. So my opponent plays the correct move, taking on c3. I take back on c3, and we get this endgame where I have the open a file, and I'm going to start pushing these pawns, and maybe I can create some chances. Rook h5, I start pushing. I go rook b1, preparing that breakthrough. b5, and I actually thought during the game that I had something more significant here, that I had some kind of advantage. Turns out I am playing correctly, but I do not. This is simply an equal position, but we're going to continue putting some pressure. AB, CB, C5, this I had calculated. Rook A7, we're attacking that pawn. They defend, bishop B6, and we play bishop to B6. Everything is correct. This is how I was supposed to play, but there is just nothing in this position. I play rook to A4. My opponent is protecting or defending very precisely. But now we get this endgame where I thought, you know what, I have some chances. I have a stronger bishop. The pawns can become a little bit weak. Let's undermine these pawns. And now we have a slightly more pleasant endgame, which should objectively be a draw. But these pawns are a bit weak. This pawn is a bit weak. This pawn is more advanced than her pawn. And so everything can happen. I play rook c8, king e4. I was very happy here with this maneuver that I found, king c3. Understanding that this is not a danger at all, because I'm going to collect these pawns eventually. So takes. And here, I thought, if I just take on b7, then rook takes h3, and I'm not going to have enough winning chances in this game. I calculated rook g7, but here simply, well, not rook h2. What did I calculate? I calculated rook g3, and I thought here I don't really have many chances. So I thought I had to keep the pawn on the board, but I blundered. And what's the move here that just wins the game for black? Goodness me, how lucky am I that she did not find the move rook takes e3. Bishop takes e3, bishop e5, and that just loses a rook. So I played the game well, I was putting pressure, I played all the moves, but I just blundered a check. Rook takes e3. And so do not be like me, always keep in mind checks, captures, and threats. I was feeling the exhaustion from the game, so I went for this. My opponent did not find it, and here I am indeed very happy with how I converted this endgame. I think that's something I made progress in, and so now this endgame, I put some pressure, I picked up the pawn, and we got into this endgame, which is just winning. An important moment came here where I had to play at this moment here. After king f3, very important that we do not promote the pawn immediately, because after takes, this is just a draw. I'm not in time to catch up with the king to this pawn, but I protect the pawn with rook to c3, which is why I played rook to c7 in the first place. Again, if I just do this, this is a draw, because takes, and king f3, she collects the pawn. But I find rook c7, and here, of course, I win the game. So finally, we got a game in. We won a game. It wasn't the smoothest, but there's still 5 games. We've only played 4. The tournament has just began. We're finally in shape. So now let's move on to day number 3. And as you might be able to tell from my voice, yeah, I was still a little bit sick, but I was starting to recover.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's currently day 3 of my Open International Tournament here in Costa Rica. The first day went pretty shit. I could tell that I wasn't really... I don't want to breakfast too much. So I'm just going to go to the supermarket, grab a fruit or something really light, go to Starbucks, grab a little coffee, prepare, and then let's see how the day goes. We've acquired the goods here at the supermarket. Now, let's get this down, go to Starbucks, and prepare.
So finally, we got in a little win. It's time to play the next game. Next day, I'm playing a 1900. He plays d4, he goes into a queen's gambit. I play this line with knight d7, bishop f4. I remembered this was not what I had prepared. I thought here he was going to play the move pawn to e3, which is what he has been playing in the other games, but with bishop to e7 instead of knight to d7. And I had a little something prepared here with the move a6. Instead he goes bishop f4, but thankfully I remembered a little bit of what I had studied many years ago. I go bishop b4. Here the line is c takes d5, knight takes, the bishop goes back to d2, this knight goes back to f6, and then after something like g3, we're going to play b6, bring this bishop out, castle, and play something like c5. This is how this usually goes, but my opponent played queen to b3. I played c5, which was the correct move. We have to protect this bishop. We don't just want to give up the bishop for free without even damaging his pawn structure. So c5, e3. I played queen a5, putting more pressure on this knight, maybe wanting to go knight to e5 next, e4, sorry. a3, I take. We get this pawn structure, this endgame. I think this wasn't the most precise. I could start with b6. He's not threatening to take anyway because of because the queen would take on a1. But I go into this endgame where he has the 2 bishops. I have a slightly better pawn structure, but my opponent plays very precisely. Knight to e5, he takes, and I actually got into a little worse endgame here. He simply has the 2 bishops and more control of the center. Still, we continue playing the game. He puts some pressure here, quite dangerous, because he's threatening to go either bishop e7 or bishop c7, collect this knight. I play a6, bishop d3. If he takes on d7 here, this I had calculated. I take back on d7, he can take on c5 and win a pawn. But here I had found the move rook to c8. I calculated this, and now I'm going to collect back and collect this bishop on d6. I also calculated that he can go rook b1. And if I take on c5, I cannot take this bishop because there would be a checkmate. But here I can simply play a move such as, for example, f6. And now his pawn structure is already worse. If he defends with something like bishop b4, there is no real risk of losing. But I was still a little bit disappointed because this isn't exactly what I wanted. But we still have a game here and we can see what happens. He goes bishop d3 though. I go c4 and we got a very imbalanced position. An imbalanced endgame. And here, ladies and gentlemen, I saw the move knight takes e4. What's the point of bishop h5? Of course, he doesn't want me to take. But I can take anyway. And I did see bishop takes d8, knight takes c3, king to d2, for example. But what I did not spot is the move knight a4, simply protecting this pawn. And if I can get that pawn for the exchange, I'm going to be doing fine. But I played rook d7 to now threaten taking on e4, but he can take on f6, which is what he did. And because of the better pawn structure, white is better in this endgame. We play a few more moves. It's very tricky. We have about equal time on the clock. I'm slightly worse. I play this move e5, breaking up those pawns. Bishop c6, bishop c2, d5. I find the best move f5. If I don't play this, he's just going to play something like f5 himself and completely lock down my pawn structure, keep this passed pawn, and win the game. So I play f5, takes, but here bishop e4 was not the most precise. I had to start with e4 check, and then eventually pick up this pawn with the king. But we get into this endgame where white is actually better. White should be better in this endgame. But now, I noticed, and I'm very thankful for the fact, that I have definitely improved my endgame skills. Because my opponent didn't know what he had to do here. He doubled on the b file, sure. a4, I protect. But now why does he play a5? Here, this was a very big relief. I'm defending the pawn, of course, I'm trying my best. He plays a5. But why is a5 a mistake? Because now he just has no more pressure on the b5 pawn, which is one of the main issues I had in this position. And what does this allow me to do? To go ahead and play on the g file, which is something that I wanted to do anyway. Something like rook g8, h5, rook g4, and we get some counterplay. That's immediately what I start doing. And now he plays rook b4. Sure, he's threatening to take on c4. I'm not going to fall for that, though. And now my position is actually fine because he wasted some time. He played a5. His rooks have nothing to do with what's supposed to be done in this endgame. I play rook b8. Now this is no longer a threat, of course, because this rook is protected by my rook. And now rook b2, h5. I go in with the rook, and somehow I'm completely winning. And here he just resigned. So that was a very strange game. I played the opening okay. I messed up in the middle game / endgame, but then my opponent had no idea what to do at all. And I managed to get in the win in this position. So, okay. Still a shaky game, but at least the results are improving. And now game 6. I've won 2 games in a row. I'm playing a 2020 rated opponent. Let's see what happens. I go for d4. He goes for the Benoni. I play g3 to get into a Catalan. This is one of the trickiest lines. But I play d5. We get into this position. This is all theoretical. Rook e1. I played this move knight d2. I didn't know the theory anymore because knight a6 is not a very popular move. But knight d2, very much correct and a very typical plan in the Benoni to get this knight over to c4, where it puts more pressure on this pawn. It liberates the bishop to protect the pawn on d5 and potentially support a push with pawn to e4. Knight c7, a4 to prevent b5. I play knight c4, and after knight g4, I had the immediate knight e4 simply attacking this pawn. Somehow, I missed something here. I didn't see white was so winning. So again, I'm not finding all the precise moves, but I thought knight b5 looked interesting. And it is. It's just that I had a much better alternative, and I thought this was around equal, which it is. And it was interesting, but I didn't see the better option that I had. So knight b5, ab, knight e5, queen c2. We get into this position. This pawn is a little bit weak, but I have control over the a file, putting pressure on this pawn on a7, which is exactly what I wanted to do. Rook a2, and a6 is actually a mistake, and I'm very happy because I detected this. The idea that my opponent had was to sacrifice the pawn temporarily, go queen b6, and pick up this pawn. But what he didn't realize is that he's not in time to actually do so. Queen a2 was very precise, the only move to protect that pawn. Bishop d2, I protect this pawn with the other rook. And now he has to play rook a7 to try to at least put pressure on this pawn by not letting me push it forward, and so that the bishop can then come to c8 and collect it. But I go, he goes bishop c8, I play a7, and now this pawn is very, very scary. And I'm actually better in this position. Here, again, I'm playing better. Look at the time on the clock. I'm no longer taking as much time as I did in the other games. I'm feeling in the flow state. I'm finding the moves. Bishop b7, I go queen a5. Correct move, trade into this endgame. He goes b4, I go pawn to b3, which was not necessary. I could have gone immediately for attacking this pawn on d6, as you'll see later. But I wanted to prevent this from happening. I'm still much better in this position. Bishop f6, bishop f4, he has to protect. I don't want him to go bishop d8, bishop b6, and collect this pawn. That's why bishop f4 was a critical move. He goes bishop e7. I play pawn to e4. Now I have ideas of bringing this bishop in with something like this. And if I can get rid of this defender, then I'll be winning in this position. Also, the d6 pawn will become a weakness. g5, I go back, and now he's going for this plan. But I have this very nice idea here of going f4, and what's the winning move in this position? We have to play very energetically and very quickly because we cannot give him the time to play bishop b6 and collect my pawn, because then I would just have nothing left in this position. Pawn to e5. We're opening up everything. We're busting up the center. Our bishops are now coming into play. I take, I play d7, and this is just completely winning. He's not in time to stop both pawns. If he goes king to e7, we play pawn to d6 check, collecting this bishop and winning the game. So my opponent goes rook d8, but here I just go d6. I'm eliminating this bishop, and now he is completely losing. Why? Because this pawn is now going to promote no matter what. If bishop e8, for example, a8, then I can just take, and now continue in this position with a move like even rook a6. He cannot take, because then I take on c5. Oops, no, I do not take on c5, because that's a check. Sorry, then I can just continue with f5, and he's pinned forever. And I can probably just queen immediately as well. Yeah, take, and I take the bishop on a7. So, I won a very nice tactical game. This gave me some confidence, and now I won 3 games in a row, and it's time to play a Grandmaster. And this I actually recorded during the tournament, but I didn't have time to upload it during the event, or I didn't have the internet to upload it during the event. So here you can see my game against Grandmaster Omar Almeida Quintana. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. As some of you might know, I'm currently in Costa Rica playing an international tournament, and I wanted to make recaps every day, but unfortunately here I don't have internet in the hotel room. I only bought data on my phone. So all of the games, all of the recaps, full tournament analysis, a vlog showing how it's like playing these events, it's all going to come out soon. But right now I have a little bit of free time, so I'm going to share with you the last game that I just finished playing in the tournament because I thought it was so interesting. I played with the white pieces against a Grandmaster. So I'm not going to spoil the whole tournament for you. If you want, you can of course check it out. I started off very, very slow, and then I got a 3-win streak, 3 games in a row that I won, one after another, some pretty high quality games. All of that I'm going to share, but right now let me show you this game that I played against a Grandmaster. I played against Grandmaster Omar Almeida Quintana from Cuba, and it was a very interesting game, and this is exactly why I like to play these tournaments, why I need to play these tournaments, because these kinds of experiences, they teach you so much. I really believe there's no better way to improve than playing classical chess against strong players. So let's get into the game. I'm playing with the white pieces, and I go e4. Now, if you've been following me, you know that I usually play d4, but if I play d4 directly, I could get into the same position, but I was scared he was going to play the Dutch. Not that the Dutch is necessarily such a dangerous or good opening, but it can get very tricky. It's exactly the style that my opponent likes, and even though I could play it, it's not what I wanted. Instead, I was aiming exactly for the position we got in the game. After d6, starting with a perk, we transposed, well, into a perk. It's still a perk. And I wanted to play this line with bishop e2 and h4. A very interesting line that I had prepared. Now my opponent goes c5. And here I was a little bit irresponsible because I was checking a bunch of different lines related to the direct h5. But I forgot about the c5 move. I knew it existed, but I hadn't analyzed it in any kind of depth. So d5 here is a possible move, but again, I don't really want to play those kinds of positions simply because it's exactly what my opponent wants, right? It is objectively the best move, and maybe I should have played it, but I don't have that much knowledge or experience in this position, so I wanted to go for something a little bit less standard. I played d takes c5, which is a good move as well. Queen a5, of course, the main idea. Now he's threatening to go knight takes e4. And here, again, irresponsibly of me, I was out of book. And the correct move here is bishop to d2. And after queen takes c5, we simply play this position after h5. It's very interesting. For some reason, I didn't like this. I didn't like the fact that I don't have a pawn in the center. It feels like a Sicilian kind of position. Although looking at it now, it's a perfectly reasonable position to play. I mean, castles, h6, looks very interesting. I played a dubious mistake, c takes d6, but the reason for this mistake is actually something that I really liked because it gives me a chance to really work on my weaknesses in the future now that I come back from this tournament. And what's the problem? I calculated exactly what was going to happen. Knight takes e4, bishop d2, knight takes c3, pawn takes c3, bishop takes c3. Here there was this move knight f3 as well, which actually, again, seems very reasonable. Although I saw castles takes, rook e8. Again, didn't quite like it. Bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, and king f1. And here is where this interesting thing happened, which is that I saw this position in my calculations. But what real difference can I tell from these grandmasters compared to a player like me? Of course, they're better at many different things, but specifically their evaluating the positions. And let me explain. E takes d6, h5, the best move according to the engine, knight c6, knight f3. Who is better in this position? I thought it was close to equal. Because obviously I'm down a pawn, but I thought the compensation is enough because my pieces are more active. Turns out that black can really just develop and I cannot actually cause him any significant problems. Bishop e6, rook h4. Obviously I want to activate my rook. And I want to go knight to d4. Because that's, I thought, the best way to play with my pieces. I saw knight g5 as well, but I thought long castles, but maybe I should have gone for this as well. Long castles, knight takes e6, f takes e6, oops, not f6, f e6, and what's happening in this position? Rook b1, and I play with compensation, but I thought he goes d5, and he doesn't have any issues. Well, I played rook h4, seemed very logical to me. But what was so interesting about this game? That my opponent knew exactly what was going on. He knew that he didn't have any problems here. I thought this looked very interesting. Knight d4, g5. Actually, a little mistake. He should have played knight takes d4. And after rook takes d4, I thought I had compensation. I thought I'm doing well here. I thought this d6 pawn is a weakness. I'm going to go bishop f3 next, rook b1. Turns out it's just -1. The pawn is clean. Now, maybe the reason for why the pawn is clean depends on some very specific lines. But let's see. For example, rook d7. I thought I could play something like bishop f3. Obviously, I cannot take the pawn because my rook is hanging. Here he just has bishop c4 check. King g1. And rook e8. Wow. And yeah, there's just nothing. And here you're getting my raw reactions, my raw analysis from the game. I haven't looked at the game with an engine before doing this recap. But yes, my opponent played g5, which actually is a little mistake. And now I find the best move. Knight takes e6, f e6. But here, there's one move which is much better than the other. And what's the natural looking move here? Well, to me, it was rook c4. The move that I played in the game, where, well, I'm gaining some tempo. I thought I'm going to go rook b1 next. I'm only down a pawn. It looks cool. But here, after queen e5, black is just fine. Turns out I had to play rook h3. And I'm guessing that is related to the fact that here my bishop is more coordinated and it's not blocked by the rook on the c4 square. And here I do actually have compensation. Say queen e5, for example, and now I can go rook b1 and rook b3 without any issues, and my bishop is already ready to play bishop b5 or bishop a6 and pin him in case of king b8. Very interesting. Rook c4, queen e5, king g1. King g1 because he was threatening queen h2. King g1 is correct. d5, rook c5, and wow. I need to work on my evaluation because this seemed so interesting to me. It seemed to me like I had something, like all my pieces are playing. I'm only down a pawn. I have a better pawn structure. But why is black just doing completely fine? Let's ask ourselves that question. And I think the answer is very simple. The answer is if my attack doesn't actually come through, then I am just down a pawn. And why does my attack not come through? Because he has enough pieces to defend. And this is a concept we've talked about on the channel before. And he just has the pieces required to defend in this position. I don't have enough firepower to pose enough threats. Yes, all my pieces look like they're playing well, except my queen, which actually was a problem later. But I don't have enough firepower to do something significant in this position. I have a little bit of compensation, but not enough. Queen d6, rook c3. Only move king b8, by the way. If he doesn't play king b8, let's say he goes something like what looks natural here. Let's just say something like rook f8. Well, now I have bishop b5 with the pin. And if I take him, then I'm opening up the b file, which my rook will come into later, and I'm going to be doing very well. So, okay, I did manage to, make him play some only moves. And if this was any other lower-rated player, he might not find all the only moves. And of course, if black does not defend precisely in this position, then white is going to have an attack, and white is going to be better. But remember, I am playing a grandmaster. And grandmasters are grandmasters for a reason, right? And so king b8, only move. Rook b1, and this is really the difference. What's the difference between a grandmaster and someone else? They're so precise. My philosophy on chess in general, or the way I see how do you win a game of chess, well, I mean, it sounds so straightforward. It's much easier to do than it actually sounds. But you play good moves. Your opponent also plays good moves. But the moment one of you doesn't play the best move and the other one does, one side starts getting an advantage, if you can kind of understand what I mean. And so I'm the one who started drifting into the wrong direction. And why did I start drifting into the wrong direction? Because I didn't quite understand the position as I should have. I played rook b1, which looks very logical. Turns out I needed to play bishop b5. But I thought against bishop b5, he can simply move his knight away with a move like knight e5. But then I'm already getting active with queen e2. Interesting. And I'm even slightly better. I played rook b1, which looked very logical. My opponent plays rook c8, rook b3, rook c7. Looks cool, like my bishop is coming in, like I have something. Nothing really works. If I play bishop a6, he can, well, here he has knight a5. And this is just losing because he's picking up this bishop with his queen. I play queen d2. But I missed the move queen f4. And now my attack is over. I played queen d3, rook f8, and here I lost the game. Here I already have nothing. All of his pieces managed to activate, and that's it. And this is a very important concept. If you're playing with initiative or with compensation, you need to not let your opponent consolidate or get his pieces into the game, which is a slight advantage that I had. But the moment I slipped up and I let my opponent do that, he got completely back into the game, and he just beat me. Queen e3, knight d4, yeah, and this is game over. Here I have nothing. So it was a very interesting game. But definitely, my opponent showed why he's better than me, why he's a grandmaster and I'm not. But this is exactly what I need, and this game I will analyze extensively to really understand what went on. So, okay, we lost against the grandmaster, but it's all good because now I'm playing 2057 rated opponent Martin Barbosa. Pretty strong player. I played him last year in the same tournament. I beat him. Now it's time to go again. I'm playing with the black pieces this time in the Caro-Kann. And look what happened. We played this line with bishop e2. I've talked about this line before. If knight f3, this is no danger at all. We take, bishop g4. We put pressure on this pawn on b6 with moves like e6, knight e7, knight f5. It's all good. But my opponent knew his stuff. He played bishop e2, which prevents this from happening immediately. I take anyway. And there's this line here, queen b6, which I was looking at. But as I asked my opponent after the game, indeed, he was going to go for knight c3. Sorry, not knight c3. What's the correct move here? Yeah, it is knight c3. Just that the Lichess engine doesn't know what's going on. Queen takes d4. Queen takes, knight takes d5. And this is just an equal endgame where probably I'll make a draw. But it's very dry and there's no real chances to win. So instead, I prepared this move bishop f5. Knight c3, e6, bishop e3, knight e7. This was all prep. But here I had a game from my opponent in the database where he went pawn to h4. And I had prepared this very interesting idea with pawn to h5, this pawn sacrifice. He cannot take immediately, because then I have this move knight b4. And so here I prepared against a3. I prepared against the move rook c1. And so I thought that after rook c1, we can maybe transpose. If rook c1, rook c8, that was the idea, that after h4, h5, I was going to play rook c8 in this position. But my opponent went for the direct g4. And here I'm actually a little bit worse. I didn't have the opening so well prepared, but I went bishop g6, knight b5. I have to go back to g8 to avoid him coming to d6 with a check. Still, h4, h5 was correct. I go bishop f5, and my position is okay, because now I'm going to play bishop e7, and I'm going to collect back this pawn. It looks like I'm very much behind in development, but he has no real way of taking advantage of that. He goes king to f1, the best move, which shows that he was very well prepared in this position. I go a6, kicking out the knight, bishop e7, I want to collect that pawn, and here I made a very inaccurate move, which was bishop takes h3. I thought the bishop was less important than the knight, but it turns out that the control of the light squares that my bishop gives is actually very, very important in this position. Because then he'll be able to play a move like bishop d3, exactly what happened, and now I'm actually worse in this position. My pawn on g7 is weak, I'm behind in development, my pieces look a little bit awkward, so I got a worse position from the opening. Let's defend, and let's see what happened. Bishop g5, queen g4. I calculated this, I take, he cannot take on g7, because if I take on c1 and he takes on h8, I'm just up a piece. I can go king to d7, I protect this knight, and everything is good. He cannot even play h6, because then I can just capture back. And this will all be good. So I go knight h6 in this position, queen g7, and go king d7 to protect, and everything is protected. I found this. I found the best defense, but I'm still a little bit worse. Let's see what happened. Bishop h7 I thought was a little bit imprecise. He saw queen f8, and he just wanted to go into this endgame up a pawn, but I'm very happy with the way I managed to create counter chances in this slightly worse position. First step, we got to activate our pieces, we got to improve our pawn structure, so we play f6. Takes. Now my rooks are getting active. Rook f8, king d2, I give a check, and my opponent starts making some imprecise moves, and I start activating my pieces. I go knight to b4, because I thought that was a good idea to remove that bishop. Turns out I could have just played the move e5 directly, but as you see, something similar ended up happening. I doubled my rooks on the second rank. He has to protect the knight. I go back to c6 and I play e5, and I've actually completely equalized, because if you can see, I played a bunch of active moves. My opponent didn't know exactly how to continue, and now I have these two rooks here. He's clamped down. I play e5. I'm threatening to take back. Very good position. King d3, a little bit imprecise. I play pawn to e4, and now look at the situation. His bishop is locked out of the game. I have the two rooks. I have ideas of going knight e7, knight f5, or like I chose knight a7 and knight b5, and I'm the one who's pressing for a win in this position already. Rook f1, knight f5, takes. He managed to finally get out of the clamp that he was in by trading a pair of rooks, which now allows him to potentially move this rook here. a4, my knight goes back, rook to h1, knight g3, and here my opponent miscalculated, even though he had more time, and played rook to h3. And so he's giving up a piece, but he thought that he could just push his pawn. Turns out, if you calculate everything, knight e6 was a very good move. Pawn h3, and I reach him in time. And now if he plays h7, then of course I'm just going to take, and whatever knight he takes back, I'm going to take on a2 next, and I'm just up a piece in this position. So he plays rook takes g3, but I take on a2, and here I am just winning with the very precise and the only move, rook to f2, which I found. What's the deal? If I play king to e7 to protect this knight this way, he can play h7, and once I take back, he has rook g7 check, collecting back the knight, and this is a drawn endgame. But what happened here? I don't know if some of you have seen the Blitz World Championship, where Magnus Carlsen dropped the queen, and that's why I lost in time. If you look, when I made this move, I had 32 seconds, which means that with the 30-second bonus, I played the move having 2 seconds on the clock. And why is that? Because I dropped his king. I dropped his king on d2. Thankfully, it still stayed on the table, and it did not fall off the table completely to the floor, because then I wouldn't have been in time to pick it up, adjust the pieces, and touch the clock. Of course, what I could have done is this, I don't know if you could call it unethical or not, I could just press the clock without actually making the move. it would be counted as an illegal move. It would give my opponent 2 minutes on the clock, but at least I wouldn't lose on time. Thankfully, just in time, I managed to adjust the piece. I played rook f2, and then I managed to win in this endgame. Of course, my opponent resigned. So, not the best situation from the opening, but I'm very happy with how I improved my dynamic chess, and I managed to play all the active moves at some point to come back from a difficult defense into a win in this game. So, we're at 5 points out of 8. We actually are gaining about 5 rating points now. From those 4 out of 5 wins that I got, only lost against the Grandmaster, and the situation is looking pretty good. Final game. I'm playing Leonardo Valdez, an international master, with the white pieces, and I had prepared in the King's Indian this line with knight e2, knight g3. A little interesting idea. The point is not to go h4, h5. I played everything correctly. I got a good position. Very important here, the bishop does not go to e2, but rather to d3 and then c2, because this is the ideal square of the bishop to protect this pawn on e4. So I played everything well. My opponent, I was playing fast as well. My opponent was low on time. Not low on time, but he was thinking quite a lot. Bishop g5, bishop f6, we take. I have a good position. Obviously, the King's Indian in general, you're going to have a good position because you get more space, you get a favorable situation, and the whole idea for black is to strike back at some point from this unfavorable situation that he's in. But I'm playing well. I find this move knight f1, which is the best maneuver. We want to get this knight to e3, because in case of knight b6, we want to protect with the knight. That's exactly what happened. But now, after a4, look at the situation. I'm up 25 minutes on the clock. I've played well. I found the correct plans, even outside of preparation. But my opponent has been playing the King's Indian defense for about 40 years, ladies and gentlemen. And so, of course, he's going to have some more understanding than me. I played the move pawn to a3, but this is already imprecise. Why is this move imprecise? There was just no need to do that. I could have castled directly. I could have played a bunch of moves. With pawn to a3, this b3 square I thought wouldn't be a weakness because of my bishop. Turns out it is actually a big deal. I thought I needed to prevent this move a3, and that would be more unpleasant, but it actually isn't at all. So a3, and now he plays f5, and I didn't know how to evaluate this position. I thought I was doing fine. I thought maybe even I have some chances because everything's opening up and he has his king in the center. I considered this move f4, which is the best move in the position. Because now after takes, I have this nice move, queen to d4, attacking this rook and then picking back up this pawn. He'd have to play the move e4, and then here I get some nice maneuvers with knight e2, knight d4. I didn't quite understand this though, and I thought queen e2 was good as well. But it's just too slow. Queen f6, what was the idea of queen e2? Well, simply protect this here to now be able to attack this pawn on f5. Because if I take immediately, then he can take back, and take on c4, if I'm not mistaken. Or start with queen f6, and then take on c4. But I went knight b5, and this was imprecise because I thought he had to play something like rook h7. And now I had calculated f4. And the idea is that if he takes, I have discovered checks. I'm overloading his rook with the defense of c7 and of h5. But in reality, this is just completely nonsensical because he goes king d8, and now I'm just worse because he got exactly what he wanted. He got the typical King's Indian breakthrough with the move pawn to f5, and now I'm just worse. And here eventually my opponent outplayed me, some tactical moments, and I lost the game. So now, let's talk about the conclusions and the plans and my general thoughts on this event. At the end of the tournament, we had a blitz event as well, where I actually managed to get 5th place out of 220-something players, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I will say I got a bit of luck in the pairings. I made some bad draws early on, and I never really played on the top, and that's what happens in these huge tournaments. So I got a bit lucky with the pairings, but I had some very interesting games. I'm happy with the games I've won. These 1,700 opponents, they're no real 1,700s if we look at their performances in the event. Plus 125, 2,050 performance. This guy, what did he have? 2,077 performance plus 137. So no real 1,700s, and they were also in contention for the same spots as me. I managed to beat them, and I got 5th place, which also gave me a little $75 prize for the best under 2,200 player in the event. So this was also a pretty good result. And at this moment, I managed to get some clips of the playing hall so you can see what the ambience was like during the tournaments. So I'm going to make another video very soon about the recap of the whole year on the road to Chess Grandmaster, how it went, my thoughts, my feelings, my plans for the future. So let's just talk about this event in specific. I didn't play my best chess, at least at the beginning. I certainly felt out of shape at some moments. But I'm very happy with the fact that I managed to come back. And this event really taught me a lot. It taught me that I have improved my endgames, and I have improved my dynamic chess, and even my calculation, which were issues that I had before, but I certainly struggled quite a lot in the opening. And I have a national championship coming up in about 2 weeks from now, where we need to perform well to qualify to the Chess Olympiad again. And so now my dedication for the next 2 weeks is going to be fully grind my openings, not only learn the theory, but actually understand the positions and really focus on that. I was happy, however, with the way the event concluded. I even gained 2 rating points eventually. So I'd say it was a success, and it was a very good warm-up for this 2026 season, where I'm going to be traveling to Europe in about a month and a half. That's coming up. That's going to be very exciting, but we're going to talk about that in the next video. So all in all, good event, lots of learning lessons, was very interesting. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, then thank you so much for watching. If you want me to help you on your own chess improvement, on your own chess journey, then you're welcome to check out the link in the description to join my school community. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.